mentioned, my focus will be on the extreme right aspects of organized anti-Semitism, of transnational connectivity, collaborations, and so on. I will briefly, though, spend a second on the great report that we produced for the Federal Foreign Office that you have been mentioned. That also there's a link in the email, in the invitation to this webinar for everyone or anyone who hasn't seen the report so far. I think it's a great resource if you are interested in the legal frameworks, for example, in France, Germany, Hungary, Poland, the US, in the statistics regarding anti-Semitism and violence, into key actors that are involved in conducting anti-Semitism in these countries, in the responses of the governments of these countries, and also in the responses of civil society. So if you want to get a very structured overview regarding the question of the role of anti-Semitism in the mobilization to violence, I think please take another look, if you haven't done so, at our report, because we have really identified clusters, hubs that we find are relevant to highlight in this rather broad category of anti-Semitism, key actors of obviously like Islamist extremists, but also connections to organized crime that are relevant in this context, foreign state influence, left-wing extremists, pro-Palestinian extremists, and of course, right-wing extremists. And as we mentioned already, the narratives, the ideology, the justifications for violence are here in the center of our previous work. We have looked at shared slogans, symbols, coordinated activities. And as I said, please take a look. Now, focusing on the right-wing extremism, if you have been following CEP's work, you know that for 6 years now, we have been put out report after report, many of them also commissioned by the Federal Foreign Office, but also from the British Foreign Office, for example, looking at the transnational connectivity, transnational activity between German and British or in other countries, violence-oriented right-wing extremists. So they are, despite being hyper-national, very international, transnational. We have old school established networks like Combat 18 and Hammerskins, but also more newer networks and more open networks like active clubs, and also, of course, accelerationists like Atomwaffen Division and groups like this. Now, they have a common denominator. There is some diversity in quotation marks in this field, but what they all agree on is Holocaust denial, the myth of Jewish global control, and they foster and try to collaborate wherever possible, despite, as I mentioned, hyper-nationalist perspectives as a starting point. And the logic behind this is to say that their perceived enemies, let's say liberal democracies, they collaborate to fight violent right-wing extremism. So they also have to collaborate to do their fighting. This is the narrative in the background. There's a lot of activities, physical activities, the annual marches, meetings, for example. We did a very in-depth report about the Independence March in Poland, which is the biggest event, probably globally, of right-wing extremists once a year. In January, the report is 2 years old, written by a Polish colleague. It's super detailed. So if you're interested in this galvanizing event, where, for example, German violent right-wing extremists go to and are very impressed by the skills of right-wing extremists in Poland in putting this together, the professionalism, there's an idea of collaborating more than before. You can imagine that right-wing extremists from Poland and from Germany have also problems. The Germans would claim that the Poles are occupying German territory. The Poles, of course, have completely different ideas here. However, they collaborate, they meet, and they're all united by a very deep anti-Semitic sentiment. There is a whole online dimension. We also have reports on those aspects of the phenomenon. And here it's maybe the clearest of within all the phenomena we're talking about. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism here. You might know that Martin Luther, the Christian reformer, um, uh, coined the phrase that die Juden sind unser Unglück, the Jews are our downfall. And this has been picked up, of course, by right-wing extremists 100 years ago and since then. And right-wing extremists often just replace the word Jews with Israel. So Israel is our downfall, which is really a stretch on all levels, obviously. If you are a right-wing organization in Germany or in Poland or in Hungary or in the US, and you claim that the Jews and Israel are responsible for your problems. So this is just maybe the clearest manifestation when anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And to give an example here on the right, you have the German extreme right party, the Third Way, der Dritte Weg, and they have been promoting the slogan, Israel ist unser Unglück, Israel is our downfall forever. It's really just a copy-paste thing from the 1920s and 30s. But here in the picture, you see Palestinian flags and German Reichsflags, so from the empire times, because it's illegal in Germany to show swastika and a neo-Nazi insignia. In the US, this would be a different assembly. There would be other flags, of course, but in Germany, they are limited in what they can do. So here they pretend to be pro-Palestinian, but of course, they're not pro-Palestinian. They're just anti-Semitic. And on the left side, you see a sticker that our dear colleague, Jacek Kurski, who leads our CEP work in Poland, Archer and CEP Poland itself, you see a burning Israeli tank, a crossed out Star of David, and the translation reads, "Nationalists with Arabs will not kneel in front of the Jews." And this is a sticker that was taken a photo of in Krakow. Now, here we are in Germany.
We usually are very lucky with as far as technology is concerned in our webinars, but now, Alexander, we've lost your sound. Maybe turn off the video and then just continue with sound. Alexander?
Yeah.
Okay, now you're back. Now you're back. I suggest turn the camera off just to save data.
Absolutely.
Good, perfect. Now I can hear you again loud and clear.
All right. So going back to this, what we're seeing here, this is a house front in Dortmund, Dorsfeld city in Germany. This is owned by the NPD, the National Democratic Party. Now they have a different name, but it's another old school extreme right neo-Nazi party. And you see here the flags. You see the Palestinian flag, you see the Iranian flag, and you see the slogan, Friede sei mit dir, meaning peace be with you. And there is a history here where the NPD, this old school German right-wing extremist party, collaborated with Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is the Caliphate party, the Caliphate group, transnational, international Islamist group. I'm just mentioning this because they collaborated in 2002 in Germany, in Berlin. Leadership of the NPD showed up at the Hizb ut-Tahrir meeting, and they were united in their open anti-Semitism, which led to a ban of Hizb ut-Tahrir in the following year. The parties in Germany cannot be banned easily. The constitution, the Supreme Court in Germany was involved in issuing a ban of this party, the NPD, but they were the court came to the conclusion that they're so insignificant politically that it's not worth banning them, that it's not worth to do this, to use this tool at the time. So the NPD is still around, but the organization was banned. And my interpretation is that this had a chilling effect for other Islamist groups that have sympathies with right-wing extremists, for example, in Germany, that would have the same flags outside of their buildings. But we don't see a lot of open cooperation here because of potential repercussions by the German government to such collaborations. Now, we have another phenomenon, the active clubs. Again, if you have been following our work, you will know that this is a transnational violent extreme right network that pretends to be about sports. Their recruitment manual says, do not talk about the Jews when trying to recruit people. Now that changed because of October 7. This is a picture from Montana in October 2023, 2 weeks after October 7. And you see suddenly that these violent right-wing extremists who are openly anti-Semitic in their close chat groups, who say, don't talk about the Jews at the beginning, but of course later on, we have to bring up who's responsible for everything allegedly and so on. Here they claim free Palestine and no more wars for Israel and Jewish terror. So they are also trying to ride the anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist wave. Now this has calmed down in current days, but again, this is interesting how violent extremists, right-wingers, for strategic reasons sometimes say this is not an issue for them publicly, but then when the opportunity arises, of course, they try to jump on it. Now, just as a brief issue, because Hans will probably speak about this, we see a lot more of open collaborations between Islamist groups and the extreme left. This is a picture from Potsdamer Platz in Germany, in Berlin. You see long live the resistance, you see Marxist flags, Palestinian flags, and we have dozens and dozens and dozens of events and protests. We have the violent extreme left, you have pro-Hamas, you have pro-PFLP, Samidoun, Masar Badil, our colleague will talk about those. So here the collaboration is much more visible on the streets. Now, to finish, what can we do about it? We are proud that we have developed for the Foreign Office a new approach to analyze and combat anti-Semitism, which we call combating organized anti-Semitism. We want to differentiate between individuals who do anti-Semitic acts knowingly, sometimes maybe unknowingly, and the professional anti-Semites who, like us, are organizing themselves in webinars, in trainings, in workshops, in conferences that raise money, that instigate violence, that call for violence, that celebrate violence, and sometimes fund violence. And the challenge that we're seeing in our analysis is that the authorities do not collaborate enough to really have a disruptive impact in many countries regarding these organized professional anti-Semitic actors. And our recommendation here is, in a very nutshell, to combine these different toolkits that different agencies have and establish joint task forces. We will talk about this in more detail in following webinars. So this is the first part of a 3-webinar series. So you will learn more about this. So we're not just telling you what anti-Semites are doing globally, transnationally, nationally. We're also advising governments and law enforcement what could be done differently to combat them more effectively. Thank you very much.